When the process server tapped my shoulder, I thought he was about to ask me where the restroom was. That's how out of place he looked, too crisp, too awake, standing in a room where everyone moved like their bones were heavier than usual. "Ethan Ward?" he said. My mother's casket sat 10 feet away under soft lights that made the wood shine like it had been waxed for a display. White lilies crowded the air until it tasted sweet and cold. Somewhere behind me, a chair creaked. Someone sniffed. I nodded once. The man held out a folder and a pen attached to a clipboard. "You've been served." For a full second, my brain refused to translate that. Then I saw the top page. "Petition for dissolution of marriage, divorce, at my mother's funeral." My hand didn't reach for the folder right away. It hovered, like touching it would make it real. And then my wife stepped into view. Claire. Black coat, perfect hair. No tears. Her eyes were dry and sharpened, like she'd done her crying somewhere private. Or not at all. "Just take it," she said. Her voice was low, controlled. "We can talk later. I'm trying to keep this clean." Clean. The word made my stomach flip. "Not today," I whispered. "It is today," she replied, without raising her voice. "Because if we wait, it gets messy." Her gaze flicked. Not to the casket, not to the flowers, not to the framed photo of my mother smiling like she had all the time in the world. It flicked to my pocket, where my mom's house keys were, where my phone was, where, Claire assumed, everything my mother owned was about to become mine. The process server didn't look at either of us. He was already halfway somewhere else in his mind. "You don't have to sign. Just accept service." My sister Natalie made a sound behind me, furious and disbelieving. I took the papers. The folder felt heavier than it should have. Claire's shoulders loosened, just a fraction, like she'd finally slid a bolt into place. Then she turned and walked back to her seat as if she'd come to pay respects. I stood there, divorce papers in my hand, my mother in a box, and a question starting to burn through my grief. Why now? And what did Claire think she was beating me to? The service moved forward because grief doesn't pause for betrayal. The pastor spoke about my mom's laugh, the way she treated neighbors like family, the way she showed up for people even when it cost her. I tried to listen, but every time I lowered my eyes, the words on the petition pulled them back. Dissolution, irreconcilable differences. A date stamped at the bottom. Yesterday. She filed while I was still in the hospital signing papers to release my mother's body. Natalie leaned toward me, her voice barely audible. "She did it here, in front of everyone." I didn't answer, because I could feel Claire's calm behind us like a hand on my neck. When the service ended, people began to stand, to gather purses and coats, to say the same soft phrases that mean nothing and everything. "I'm so sorry. She was wonderful. Let me know if you need anything. I didn't know what I needed." Then a man in a gray suit approached, holding a slim leather briefcase. "Mr. Ward," he said gently. "I'm Raymond Clark, your mother's attorney." The title landed like a sudden gust. Natalie stiffened. Claire's head turned. Mr. Clark looked at me with practiced steadiness. "Your mother instructed me to read her will today, immediately." "Today?" Natalie repeated, sharp. "Yes," Mr. Clark said. "She was specific." Claire rose from her chair before I could speak. "I think that makes sense," she said, too quick, too agreeable. "We should settle things properly." Properly. Another word that didn't belong in this room. Mr. Clark led us down a hallway to a small meeting room with a long table and a box of tissues sitting in the center, like a warning. The family filed in. Natalie, my Uncle Frank, my Aunt Lydia, 2 cousins. Claire sat closest to the attorney. Of course she did. Mr. Clark opened his folder. The pages inside were clipped and tabbed like my mother had built them as carefully as she built meals. Measured, patient, impossible to rush. He cleared his throat. "I'm going to read this as written," he said. "Questions and objections can be addressed later through the proper channels." Claire smiled tightly. "Understood." I stared at the table, trying to imagine my mother in her kitchen, signing this with the same hand that used to tap the counter while she waited for the kettle to boil. Mr. Clark began. "First, I direct that my debts and final expenses be paid from my estate. Standard. Second, I leave my personal effects, jewelry, photographs, sentimental items, to my daughter, Natalie Ward." Natalie blinked, surprised. Her hand floated to her mouth. Claire didn't move. Third, I leave the cabin at Pine Hollow Road, including its contents, to my son, Ethan Ward. The cabin. My throat tightened. Claire's eyes flickered, quick, greedy calculation, then returned to neutral. Fourth, Mr. Clark continued, I leave my brokerage accounts, including all investment holdings, to my son, Ethan Ward. Claire's knee shifted under the table. Fifth, I leave my interest in Ward Rentals, LLC, to my son, Ethan Ward. My Uncle Frank let out a low whistle, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Then Mr. Clark turned a page. Sixth, he read, I leave $1 to my sister, Lydia Collins. Aunt Lydia jerked upright. 1. Raymond, that has to be... Mr. Clark didn't look up. As written. The room went still. Claire's lips parted slightly, her composure wobbling. Seventh, Mr. Clark continued, voice smooth as stone, I leave $1 to my daughter-in-law, Claire Ward. Claire's face froze. $1, not a token necklace, not a polite percentage, $1. The kind of number you leave when you want to make sure someone can't argue they were forgotten. That's not... Claire started, and her voice broke on the second word. Natalie leaned forward, eyes bright. She didn't forget you, that's the point. Mr. Clark lifted a hand, quieting the room without raising his voice. There is also an instruction, he said, turning to a tabbed section. Claire's breath caught. Upon completion of this reading, I direct my attorney to deliver the contents of Safe Deposit Box 214 at First National Bank to my son, Ethan Ward. Safe Deposit Box. Claire's eyes snapped to mine. Now I understood the timing. Divorce papers at a funeral weren't just cruelty. They were an anchor. A way to plant her flag in the ground before whatever my mother left me could be moved beyond her reach. Mr. Clark paused one last time. There is a note, he said, handwritten. Your mother requested that it be read aloud. He unfolded a single page. The handwriting was instantly familiar. Slight slant, heavy downstrokes, like she wrote with conviction. Mr. Clark read, Ethan, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't get to tell you goodbye the way I wanted. I need you to hear one more thing. People choose funerals because grief makes you careless. It makes you generous. It makes you desperate to keep the peace. Don't. Go to the bank. Open box 214. Look at what I left you. And no matter what anyone says, remember, love doesn't show up with paperwork when your hands are shaking. Mom. For a moment, nobody breathed. Claire sat very still. Not sad. Scared. Dash. The drive to the bank felt like crossing into a different world. Outside, the sky was low and colorless. The streets were wet, reflecting brake lights in long red smears. Natalie sat in the passenger seat beside me, fists clenched in her lap. Claire rode in the back seat, posture straight, eyes fixed forward as if she could stare the day into changing. In the parking lot, she tried to touch my arm. Ethan, she said softly, the way she used to speak when she wanted something. Your mom never liked me. Whatever she did, whatever she thought she knew. I don't want to hear it, I said. Her fingers withdrew as if they'd been burned. Inside the bank, the air smelled like paper and cold metal. A manager led us into a small room with a table bolted to the floor. Mr. Clark set his briefcase down. The box belongs to Ethan, he said, gentle but firm. Only he decides who sees what's inside. Claire's jaw tightened. I'm his wife. Natalie's laugh was sharp, humorless. For now. I placed my hand on the small drawer labeled 214. My palms were damp. The lock clicked. The drawer slid open. Inside were 3 items: a manila envelope, a velvet pouch, and a black flash drive taped to a note. The note was in my mother's handwriting. Play this first. Claire leaned forward before she could stop herself. Mr. Clark pulled out a laptop. He didn't ask permission. He watched my face. I nodded. He inserted the drive. A single audio file appeared. A PRIL_03_AUDIO. My heart gave a slow, heavy thud. Mr. Clark clicked play. At first, room noise, a chair shifting, a faint hum. Then a voice, Claire's voice. Warm, sweet, carefully chosen. Diane, it's just paperwork, the recording said. It protects Ethan. You know he hates dealing with this stuff. My mother's voice answered, quieter, tired. Why does it name you? She asked. On the recording, Claire laughed lightly. Because I'm his wife. I'm the person who'll keep things stable. It's logical. A pause. My mother again. Logical for you. The room felt like it shrank. Claire's real face went pale, just a shade. The recorded Claire continued, the sweetness thinning. You don't have to make this harder, she said. If you don't sign, Ethan will blame you. He'll think you did it on purpose. My stomach turned, grief weaponized. Exactly what my mom warned about. On the recording, my mother's voice steadied. I'm not signing anything you wrote, she said, and I'm not letting you threaten my son with his own feelings. A silence. Then recorded Claire, low and cold. Fine, then I'll do it another way. Funerals make people soft. The file ended. In the quiet afterward, I could hear my own breathing. Claire's hands were clenched together so tight, her knuckles looked like bone. Natalie stared at her like she was seeing a stranger wearing Claire's face. Claire pushed her chair back abruptly. That's out of context, she said, voice thin. Your mom was paranoid. She recorded me without... Stop, I said, one word. It cut through her like a wire. I reached for the manila envelope. Inside were printed emails, text message screenshots, and a notarized statement from my mother. My eyes locked on one line in a message thread. File at the funeral. He'll be too numb to fight. The sender wasn't my mother. It wasn't Natalie. It was Claire, to someone saved as M. My pulse slowed in a strange way, like my body was bracing for impact by turning everything down. Claire saw it. Her gaze dropped to the page. Her lips parted. No, she whispered, as if the word could erase ink. Natalie spoke softly, and somehow that made it worse. You planned it. Claire's eyes darted from me to Mr. Clark, hunting for a lifeline. But there wasn't one. Because my mother hadn't left me accusations. She'd left me proof. Claire swayed. She tried to straighten, to reclaim control the way she always did. Chin up, breath even, posture perfect. But her body betrayed her. Her knees buckled. One hand reached for the table and missed. Claire folded sideways, slow and helpless, and hit the carpet with a dull thump. Her eyes rolled back. She fainted. Dash. The bank manager called paramedics. Mr. Clark requested a copy of the security footage. Natalie stood over Claire like a guard. When Claire came back to herself, she looked up at me with raw panic. Not heartbreak, not regret. Panic. You're going to destroy me, she whispered. I stared at her, waiting for the rush of victory. It didn't come. What came was something quieter. A clean line drawn through a messy story. No, I said. You tried to use my mother's death to take what you wanted. You did that to yourself. Mr. Clark spoke in the same calm tone he'd used in the meeting room. Ethan, he said, your mother also insisted on a prenuptial agreement prior to your marriage. The terms are clear. Attempting to claim estate assets through timing or pressure would violate the disclosure clause. Claire's face went blank. Prenup? I repeated. Natalie's laugh was small, almost relieved. Mom made you sign it. Remember how mad Claire got? I remembered. Claire calling my mom controlling. My mom smiling politely, holding her ground. Not controlling. Protecting. We left the bank with the envelope and the velvet pouch. Claire refused the ambulance ride, insisted she was fine, insisted she was being set up. But her words sounded different now, like someone shouting in a room that had already emptied. At the graveside, later, as dirt tapped softly on the casket lid, I kept my eyes on the ground. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. My mother had said what mattered. She'd done it with ink and audio and a key to a metal box. On the drive home, Natalie opened the velvet pouch carefully. Inside was my mother's wedding ring and a folded note. Give this to the person who loves you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. I sat with that for a long time, because that day I'd been stripped down to nothing but grief, and Claire had seen it as opportunity. My mother had seen it as danger, and even in death, she'd protected me from the kind of love that only shows up when it's about to get paid. Claire served me divorce papers at my mom's funeral because she thought I'd be too broken to resist. But when the will was read and the box was opened, she learned something my mother had always understood. Some legacies aren't money. They're safeguards. And when the truth finally speaks out loud, especially in your own voice, you don't always get to stand there and pretend you're fine. Sometimes, you hit the floor.